Hello everyone. In this topic, we'll discuss about conditional access. Conditional access is a tool that Microsoft Entra ID uses to allow or deny access to resources based on identity signals. So basically, it is like if then statement. So if you have access, then prove with an action. So the action can be in a certain location. You need to be in a certain location to access the application, or you need to be in certain IP network range for you to access the applications, or might be the device should comply with security policy. So there are some patches which has been updated from Microsoft, or for the devices which you are using, might be the operating system version. It has to comply with the operating system version to access the application or resources. Only then you will be able to access the application. So how does conditional access helps IT administrator? Conditional access provide users to be productive wherever and whenever. So whenever there is an IT administrator who has been called, it is not that he will be always available in the office network. He can be at home, he can be in some remote location or in a coffee shop. So you should be able to access the application. So conditional access with the help of policy, the IT administrator will be given an access with additional security measure. So conditional access not only provides the access for the administrator wherever and whenever, it also protects the organization assets by taking into consideration the right administrator or the right user is given the access. Conditional access also provides a more granular multi-factor authentication experience for users. For example, a user might not be challenged for a second authentication factor if they are at a known location. Let us take example, if these users are in an office location and this office is in Pune and it's in Injawadi IT center. So this is the office location, and this office location has a network of 18.10.x network. Since the users are already in the office network, they are not asked for the second authentication, which is multi-factor authentication. With only the single factor authentication, which is first factor authentication, they should be able to log into the office network and access the resources. They can access the virtual machine, they can access the applications, whichever which has been permitted for the employees. During sign in, conditional access collects signal from the users. So what is the signal here? They are in the office location and they are allowed to access the applications which are permitted, and it makes the decision based on the signal. So during the sign in, conditional access collects the signal from the users. So basically, you are trying to access with the first factor authentication, which is your user ID, password, email ID, or your Windows Allow for Business. So you have used your first factor authentication and you have already logged into your office network. Basically, it makes decision based on those signals from where you have logged in. So if you have already logged in from your office network, only single factor authentication is okay for you to access all these applications, right? So based on the signal detected, it will enforce the decision by allowing or denying the access. So since you are already there in the office network, you are always allowed to access the application. If you are not in the office network, which is in this particular IT center network, then you might be challenged for a second factor authentication. So that is what it says. So there is a diagram which shows the signal, the decision, and the enforcement which will be taken care by conditional access policy. The signal can be of user location. The user location, as I said, it can be in the office network. So if the employees or the users are in the office network, then the first factor is okay. The first factor authentication is enough to prove the user that is the right user and he will be authenticated. If the user, like wherever and whenever the IT administrator are called, he should be available to do some configuration settings or to do the troubleshooting, or if there is any P1, P2 issues which is going on, then he should be able to troubleshoot. He can be in a remote location, right? He can be in coffee shop, or he can be in airport. Say suppose there is an emergency mail which requires an approval. There is a workflow which requires an approval, and the manager is at airport. How do you prove his authenticity? So basically, this location is not part of the office network. Only if the users are connected in office network, then the single factor authentication is okay. But when the users are connecting from remote location, coffee shop, or airport network, then you challenge with the second factor authentication. Then the user will prove his authenticity. So this will be the action statement. Once he has proved his authenticity with the second factor authentication, then you will be able to provide the access for the resources, right? The next signal can be of user device. So user device is completely compliant with the corporate security policy. Like the updates are perfect, the antivirus software is running with the latest update, and all the security patches has been updated. Only then we allow to access the resources and the applications. So whichever applications which require the access, it has to go through certain condition. Only then the application will be granted the access. So based on these signals, the decisions are made whether to allow or deny the access. The signal is basically the user device, and the application, and the decision is either to grant the access or deny the access. If I am granting the access, what is the condition? The condition is multi-factor authentication, second factor authentication. So you are challenged to use the multi-factor authentication because you are not in office network. If you are in office network, single factor authentication is fine. Since you are in remote location, you have to prove that you are the right owner to access the resources. So this is what, if the user is signing from an unusual location, which is not in the office network, then you will be prompted for a second factor authentication. And enforcement is the action that carries out the decision. So when can I use conditional access? When you wanted to enforce the multi-factor authentication, when a user is not in an office network, then you should be able to apply the conditional access policy. And if you wanted to allow access to the services only through approved clients, then you will be able to use the conditional access. And if you wanted to permit the user to access the application from a managed devices, so they have the mobile devices or computers or laptops which has the standard, so which meets the corporate standard and which has some certain security and compliance policy. This device, whatever the user is using, either it will be a mobile device or a computer or laptop, which we have seen in a regular authentication process. So these are the devices which will be used. Either it will be a mobile device or it will be a PC or laptop. If the devices are meeting the corporate security standard, only then the devices are allowed to access the resources. If the user are in a some remote location which is untrusted, and you have blocked those locations, and you have also blacklisted those IP addresses, then if the users are trying to access from the blacklisted location and blacklisted IP networks, you can use conditional access to deny the access. So in summary, there is a signal, there is a decision, there is also an enforcement. So there is signal, there is decision, there is enforcement. right? And this is for the conditional access. So I have the policy with conditional access, which has to meet certain criteria. And to meet the certain criteria, the signal can be applied for the user and device and application. The decision can be grant the access or allow access or deny the access. Enforcement is what is the condition. If I am granting the access or allowing the user to access, what is the enforcement? I can challenge with second factor, multi-factor authentication. If I am denying, what is the condition? Because he is not coming from the office network, he is in the untrusted network or from a blacklisted IP range. And to enable the conditional access, we require P1 license. So there are licenses for Microsoft Entra ID. So Microsoft Entra ID comes with licenses, which is free license, P1 license, P2 license, and Microsoft Entra ID governance license. So apart from these are applied at so these are basically billed per user and per month. So this will be the billing. So this was an overview about conditional access policy. Thank you for watching the video. If you like the content, please subscribe and share the video. Thank you and take care.